Okay, so we covered this quite a bit yesterday when we were hosting the Jimmy Dore show. But of course, the ongoing disaster in Los Angeles is a major focus of today's show. Even though we did cover it yesterday, there's just so much new to talk about. And so Chief Nerd posted this video here, Real Life Apocalypse. So this just gives you a sense of how Los Angeles looked this morning.
Apocalypse in California. Bro, real life apocalypse in California. Everything is burning to the ground. You guys, it's like a zombie land. Look at this. Look at this, bro. Everything's burning to the ground, you guys. People left their cars. They left everything behind. Newscaster out. Man. If this ain't crazy, then what's crazy, you guys? Is the world coming to an end? Oh my God, look at the grocery store. Look at this shit, you guys. What the fuck? Oh my God. Real life apocalypse. Wow. The food market is burning down. Burns up. Everything's gone. What? The elementary school?
That is crazy footage. That looks like a first-person video game. Driving through a war zone. I mean, it really does look like something out of a movie.
Yeah, there have been videos going around of like the Sunset Strip burned down.
Oh yeah, I mean, entire square blocks. I mean, it looks decimated. Jackson Hinkle tweeted out a photo of just block after block after block of rubble. And he said, "This isn't Gaza. This is Los Angeles." I mean, he didn't mean that in a funny way. Obviously, it's because it's not funny, but it is true. I mean, we've been seeing footage of just decimated war zones, and of course, we wouldn't call Gaza a war zone. That is being genocided. But the ruin there is. I mean, when you look at overhead images of these parts of LA, it looks just like that. I mean,
Right.
This is the second most populated city in America. Like this is a catastrophe on probably the largest scale we've seen in decades in terms of a city in ruins. I mean, since Katrina, and
Since Katrina,
yeah, and no disrespect to New Orleans, obviously. In New Orleans, that was an act of, really, I would argue, the sabotage and intentional neglects of a poor black section of a city. And so, I don't want to be disrespectful in comparing the pain and the trauma and the loss, but just in terms of size, the French Quarter is not the French Quarter, the lower Ninth Ward, which was the area that was affected by, in 2005, a much, much, much smaller area than this. This we're talking about, Los Angeles Metro is, I think, the largest city in America by land area. And in terms of population, the city of LA, second only to New York. So, yeah, I mean, this is devastation on such an unbelievable scale that it is really difficult to fathom. And, of course, there are people who don't have to think it up in their minds. There are a lot of people living through this right now in Southern California. Donald Trump tweeted against Gavin Newsom, but yesterday he got in front of the camera and thought he would double down on his attacks.
Criticism of Governor Gavin Newsom. Are you willing to work with him, and do you believe that federal aid should be provided to California for as long as it takes?
Well, it's very sad because I've been trying to get Gavin Newsom to allow water to come. You'd have tremendous water up there. They send it out to the Pacific. because they're trying to protect a tiny little fish, which is in other areas, by the way, called a smelt. And for the sake of a smelt, they have no water. They had no water in the fire hydrants.
For the
today in
sake
Los
of a
Angeles.
smelt.
It was a terrible thing.
That should be that sounds like the title of a Dr. Seuss book. For the sake of a smelt.
And in the Castro, I've heard they do things with that smelt. I don't even want to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's that's the only reason they want to save it, I understand, because they ran out of gerbils.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Way, called a smelt. And for the sake of a smelt,
For the
they
sake
have
of
no
a
water.
smelt,
They
they
had
have
no
no
water in
water.
the fire hydrants today in Los Angeles. It was a terrible thing.
That's going to be
And
our
we're going to get
play
that
about
done.
this.
It's going to finally be done. I got
Yeah.
it done from the federal side, and he didn't want to sign it, but it's not going to happen again like that. There's no reason. Can you imagine? You have farmers that don't have any water in California. They have plenty of water. They don't have a drought. They send it out to the Pacific, and it's crazy. So what's happening in California is a true tragedy. I know those areas very well. I have many friends living in those houses. That is a true tragedy. Nobody ever thought. I mean, virtually Beverly Hills and areas around Beverly Hills are being decimated. The biggest homes, some of the most valuable homes in the world are just destroyed. I don't even know. You know, you talk about a tax base. If those people leave, you're going to lose half your tax base of California. This is a true tragedy, and it's a mistake of the governor, and you could say the administration. They don't have any water. They didn't have water in the fire hydrants. They don't have water. And yet they have, the water comes from, you know where? Up north. And it comes down at levels, they give millions and millions of barrels of gallons of water that they have, and they send it out into the Pacific. For the Pacific, it's like a drop, it's nothing. But for California, it would take care of the whole state. So what's happened is a tragedy, and the governor has not done a good job. With that being said, I got along well with him when he was governor. We worked together very well, and we would work together. I guess it looks like we're going to be the one having to rebuild it. But what happened there, I don't think there's anything that I've ever seen quite like it. And the insurance companies are going to have a big problem, because you're talking about big, big dollars.
Well, we're going to get more into the insurance company side of this in a later segment. But Anderson Cooper, a little bit of a tougher gig than New Year's Eve here. He's out there in the middle of all this. And he asked Governor Newsom for his response to Trump's comments.
We're in the public safety phase.
I hate to even ask this question, but the president-elect chose to attack you, blame you for this.
One can't even respond to it. I mean, it's people are literally fleeing. People have lost their lives. Kids lost their schools. Families completely torn asunder. Churches burned down. This guy wanted to politicize it. I have a lot of thoughts, and I know what I want to say. I won't. I stood next to a president of the United States of America today, and I was proud to be with Joe Biden. And he had the backs of every single person in this community. He didn't play politics, didn't try to divide
Joe
any of
Biden
us.
was proud to be with Theodore Roosevelt because that's who he thought you were.
That's who we thought you were. That's right. Well, let's take a look at a highlight from this meeting with Biden, where Joe Biden thought this was the appropriate time to announce that he is now a great-grandfather. That's right.
Notification yesterday their home is probably burning down. Today, the parents of the baby still standing. I'm not sure. But the good news is, I'm a great grandfather as of today. I have a granddaughter, and baby girl, baby boy. So I remember this day for.
Gotta watch Newsom's delayed reaction to this. Newsom was like, God,
He's like, this isn't happening. This isn't happening.
why did he have to come? Why do I have to stand here next to him? He's like, God, counting down the days when this guy can't just tank the part. Don't forget Newsom until now. I mean, I think this is absolutely devastating to Newsom's prospects in 2028, but he certainly plans on running in 2028. And he knows that if this event is fresh in the minds of voters by 2028, he's got no shot. And here's Joe Biden. Look at look at the look on Newsom's face. Hold on, let's just look at his reaction when he announces that.
I'm a great grandfather as of today. I have a granddaughter, and baby girl, baby boy. So I.
Go ahead.
Where the fuck do you get the balls?
Yeah, right. This guy's just an absolute wrecking ball to his party. Just like doing everything imaginable to like tank the party. Stands next to the governor. Yeah. So I was just talking about this guy's house burns to the ground. It's terrible. Hey, good news is I became a great grandfather.
Good news
How about a
is
mazel tov?
I saved money on my car insurance.
Yeah, right.
I have never understood the belief that Gavin Newsom has a snowball's chance in hell in a presidential race. He's saddled with California. That is not a good thing. That's not a good thing. As we saw in this last election, there are not enough libs to win an election on the most Joy Reid deranged MSNBC viewers alone. You need more voters than that. There is nobody outside of that cohort who thinks the fact that you were the governor of California in this era is a calling card to recommend you for the presidency. He has no political future. I have no idea why people even entertain the idea that he does. Before the fire, California has done terribly throughout his tenure. Look at this poor smelt. Even the smelt doesn't like him.
Even the smelt. And the thing is, this did not work out well for the smelt. So even with the maneuvering, they still got screwed, as Trump said. It didn't work. He's even screwed over the smelt.
He even screwed the smelt. Between his what was it, the French Laundry that he was going to during the pandemic for his fundraiser. California's been losing population. Businesses are leaving the state. Now, whatever your analysis of that is, his tenure has been terrible. I talked about this a little bit last night on Jimmy's show. I've talked about it before on this show. You know, when I went out there, it's like a year ago right now that I went out to L.A., and I hadn't been there in 21 years. It looks like a third world country, man. Now that is a result of decisions and policies that predate Newsom, but it improved the situation. It's terrible there.
Well, if anything, I mean, you look, California not too long ago, I forget when this was touting this big surplus. They had this huge budget surplus.
Right.
And look what they did with it. I mean, you got people sleeping under every bridge. You have income inequality rearing its head, you know, in sort of every corner of every city there. San Francisco has become a playground for the ultra-rich and unlivable for everyone else.
That's it.
LA's a bigger city, so there's a little larger of a middle class there, but not really. Not really.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Not anymore. I first went to LA when LA was still revered as the American place of dreams. The first time I went there in the 80s. And yeah, I found it a very strange place, very bizarre. But it was what it was. If you dug that, you dug that. Now, it's really a shadow of what it was in that era. So the idea that somebody could be, and look at San Francisco. I mean, San Francisco is also, the whole state is a wreck. Like what? But like the fire is just kind of the capstone to his governorship, which has just been terrible for that state throughout. And again, I mean, it was going in that direction before Gavin Newsom got there, but now it's like the worst combination of gentrification and defunding of public services. Like very often, the trade-off with gentrification is all these people with money come in. You increase the tax base. These people have certain expectations of what the city is going to provide, and it winds up making everything very clean, very safe, very sterile. LA, it's like the worst of both worlds. And San Francisco as well, where you've got gentrification making everything unaffordable, but it's a total third world shithole.
Right. Exactly. You don't even really see the benefits of that extending beyond the very rich.
Right.
That really is what these cities have turned into. But let's get into this a little more. So Trump blames California's governor and his water policy for wildfires. The Times writes up, President-elect Donald J. Trump on Wednesday blamed California's Democratic governor for the failure to contain fires engulfing parts of the Los Angeles area, turning a still evolving natural disaster into a political opportunity and accusing the state's government of letting environmental policies run amok. In a post on his social media site, Mr. Trump mocked Governor Gavin Newsom, calling him incompetent and claiming that the governor had blocked an infusion of water to Southern California because of concern about the impact on a threatened fish. Governor Gavin Newsom refused to sign the water restoration declaration put before him that would have allowed millions of gallons of water from excess rain and snowmelt from the north to flow daily into many parts of California, including the areas that are currently burning in a virtually apocalyptic way. He wanted to protect an essentially worthless fish called the smelt by giving it less water. It didn't work, but it didn't care about the people of California. Now the ultimate price is being paid. I will demand that this incompetent governor allow beautiful, clean, fresh water to flow into California. He is to blame for this. On top of it all, no water for fire hydrants, not firefighting planes. A true disaster. The governor's press office responded with a statement on social media. There is no such document as the Water Restoration Declaration. That is pure fiction, the statement said on X. The governor is focused on protecting people, not playing politics, making sure firefighters have all the resources they need. Debates in California over water have a long history. Most of the state's water comes from Northern California, which receives more rain and snow each year than Southern California, as has been the case so far this winter. But most of that water is used by Central Valley farmers and Southern California residents, setting up a perennial battle over how much water the state and the federal government should send south. For water purposes, the conflict is over whether to divert some water to the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta and San Francisco Bay to save the smelt and other ecosystems, or to send it to farmers in the Central Valley and urban users like Los Angeles City residents. Growers in Southern California get much of their water from a different system through the Colorado River. So as you can see there, there is some truth to what Trump is saying. Obviously, I was not able to find in my research any such water restoration declaration, and so it seems to be that he did pull that one out of his ass. But as you can see here, even according to the Times, that the diversion in question did prioritize the smelt over farmers in the Central Valley and urban users like LA. So it doesn't seem to be a total fabrication. That battle has generated years of litigation over the fate of the fish. The Delta smelt is a federally threatened species and a California endangered species, so courts have often dictated how much water the state can pump south and how much it can divert to the ocean. So, there is recency bias when we are creating our year-end awards, but there's got to be some special award this year for the Delta smelts. We have to remember that. I don't know. I mean, it's not their fault. You can't call them dissidents of the year. They're certainly not assholes. As we said, it's not their fault that this is happening. They're just caught up in all this.
Yeah.
But we got to have some recognition for the smelt.
Yeah, as we go, we have to tell Jake to just make notes.
Yeah,
make those things.
Make notes. We have to carve out a special category for the smelt.
We're going to forget all about the smelt.
Right, exactly. And they might be extinct by then, so it might be especially important to honor them. Because I'm telling you right now, the Delta smelt are not winning over too many friends.
No.
Right now. They are in a tough spot. They were put in a very, very tough spot by all of this. In 2019, during his first term, Mr. Trump pushed changes that would have diverted more water to growers in the Central Valley. His Interior Secretary was David Bernhardt, who was a lobbyist in Washington for Westlands Water District, a big player in the valley that delivers water to farmers. Those changes were opposed by environmentalists who expressed concern about the impact on fish like salmon and smelt. The Biden administration, working with Mr. Newsom, backed a different plan when Mr. Biden entered office that allowed water to flow, but with more efforts to protect fish. More on that in a couple of minutes, all right? The Biden administration backed a different plan when Mr. Biden entered office. That plan, apparently those new rules were just announced a couple of weeks ago. In his post on Wednesday, Mr. Trump said, "I will demand that this incompetent governor allow beautiful, clean, fresh water to flow into California," blah, blah, blah. We read all that in its entirety the first time. But it's not clear that the diversion of water that Mr. Trump proposed would have affected the explosion of fires in the Los Angeles area this week or the ability of firefighters to battle it. Water supplies have been strained in Pacific Palisades, where some firefighters connected hoses to hydrants on Wednesday only to find them empty. And some firefighting planes were grounded as the fires erupted on Tuesday, but officials have said that was because of high winds and smoke, not because of a lack of water. Officials also disputed Mr. Trump's suggestion that the dispute over the smelt and other fish hampered the firefighting efforts this week. The water wars have largely focused on the need for irrigation by farmers, not on the use of water by firefighters. So, now I have been researching this for the last couple of days, putting together first the show for the segment for the Jimmy Show last night, and then this one as their feud has sort of heated up. No pun intended. Unfortunate use of words, perhaps. But it does seem to me like Trump has been on this issue for a while. It also seems very unlikely, given the scale of the fire and the intensity of the winds, that you would have averted much damage had they gotten more water there. Now, that doesn't mean that Trump is wrong to say that I've been sounding the alarm about lack of water to L.A. for many years, and he has. And look, you got square blocks in ruins. So if you could save 100 homes with more water, it's worth doing. I'm not saying that. Right. But it seems like the claim, which Trump is not making explicitly, but, when you look at what he's saying, he's starting, it suggests that the moisture in the grounds that he laments, a lack of moisture in the ground, like for the farmers, that could have been distributed throughout Southern California, which would have prevented these fires. There doesn't seem to be much truth to that. So, I think this was obviously just a horrible, horrible lack of preparation on the mayor's part and on the governor's part. They knew there were going to be record high winds. They knew there had been a drought going back 8 months. That, to me, is more damning than the water supply situation. But given that Trump has been talking about this for now almost a decade, not just in 2019, but as we'll see later in the segment, almost a decade, there is a case to be made that they should have found a way to get the city more water. I mean, I think that's pretty evident.
Yeah, well, this, we just did the North Carolina segment. This is from one end of the country to the other. It's just poor government. The incentives of government at this point are just to kiss ass on rich donors. The public is an afterthought.
Right. Of course. Now, I want to get a little more into this. More water for urban areas, some farms. Biden, Newsom officials announced long-awaited new water delivery rules. And if you notice, the date on this was not immediately after Biden took office, as the New York Times kind of implied, but December 20th, 2024. So in other words, just a couple of weeks ago. State and federal water officials announced today their long-awaited new rules for operating two massive water delivery systems that serve 30 million Californians and much of the state's farmland. The rules will oversee operations of the State Water Project and the Federal Central Valley Project, which carry water from Northern California rivers to south to San Joaquin Valley farmers, Los Angeles area residents, and many other water users in the southern half of the state. Deliveries will increase for major urban water suppliers and many farms, while they'll be cut for some farmers. Schedules for releasing water from Lake Shasta, the state's largest reservoir, will be revised. Many farm groups and urban water districts applauded the new path forward, commending it as the best of several alternatives analyzed by state and federal officials for maintaining water supplies while protecting the environment. Now, just a note, the environmentalists were apparently not happy with this. They thought this was worse than Trump's original plan. So they were pretty pissed off about that. So once again, no real relief in sight for the Delta smelt. Okay, in all of this, the effort to protect the smelt was in vain and ended up causing a lot more problems for the Delta smelt than if they hadn't tried at all. I think the Delta smelt are the big losers in all of this at the end of the day. As of this moment, Gavin Newsom and his Los Angeles crew have contained exactly 0% of the fire. It is burning at levels that even surpassed last night. This is not government. I can't wait till January 20th, so Trump really making hay out of this. No water in the fire hydrants, no money in FEMA. This is what Joe Biden is leaving me. Thanks, Joe. Now, I said a few minutes ago, Trump has been talking about this not just since 2019, but since 2016. So here he is on the campaign trail. So this was in advance of the California primary. This was posted to CNN's YouTube May 28th, 2016, at a rally in Fresno, where he references the Delta smelt. Not by name, but you can see what he's talking about now almost 10 years ago.
We're going to solve your water problem. You have a water problem that is so insane. It is so ridiculous, where they're taking the water and shoving it out to sea. And I just met with a lot of the farmers who are great people, and they're saying, we don't even understand it. They don't understand. Nobody understands it. And I've heard this from other friends of mine in California, where they have farms up here, and they don't get water. I said, oh, that's too bad. Is it a drought? No, we have plenty of water. I said, what's wrong? Well, we shove it out to sea. And I said, why? And nobody even knows why. And the environmentalists don't know why. Now they're trying to protect a certain kind of 3-inch fish.
Trump did not go into detail about how officials would open.
He's been on those Delta smelt for a long time.
I grabbed Gavin Newsom by the shoulders. I slapped him. I said, what does this state to you? He said, it's my sister. I slapped him again. He said, it's my daughter. I slapped him again. He said, it's my sister. He doesn't know what's going on over there.
Yeah. Yep. So there was Trump's routine back in 2016. So look, you could make the broad point. Look, I'm a stickler for accuracy, I suppose. So in going down this rabbit hole all day yesterday and then more into the night last night, I mean, I've learned more about this fucking smelt in 2 days than most people will learn in a lifetime. But, you know, as a stickler for accuracy, I do have to say that, like, I don't believe that but for the rerouting of that water, you'd have a pristine and fully functional Los Angeles right now. I think this was a confluence of circumstances that led to a horrible disaster that the likes of which, you know, I'm not sure how well could have been mitigated under any circumstance. I will say, though, big picture, very broadly speaking, yeah, I mean, look, Trump's been saying since 2016 there's not enough water in L.A. So whatever your solution might have been, whether it was the rerouting of this water out to the ocean, which should have come downstate, something. You could make the case, especially the Democrats who are, especially California Democrats, who are very much the party of climate change. I mean, this is really the home of all these environmental regulations and electric cars and things like that. You think that if they really took that problem as seriously as they claim to, they'd have come up with a way to get more water to Los Angeles over the past 10 years. And to have this all culminate in this, yeah, it's devastating for Newsom. Devastating. Now, Russell didn't believe in his prospects before this, but this is absolutely crushing.
I never understood why anyone talked about him as a serious national candidate. But hey, I'm gonna totally black pill everybody. Okay, and there's not like a government thing. There's just a reality thing. There's only so much you could do to, good government your way out of nature. There are parts of this country that are not really all that habitable without enormous amounts of human intervention. And even with that, we're only habitable under very specific conditions. So you look at New Orleans, yeah, that is more so than LA, partly climate change driven, that the hurricanes are becoming more intense. But the element where you need a lot of human intervention is there are constantly pumps going in New Orleans to keep it from flooding because it's a bowl below sea level. and it's sinking. Okay? Like, there's only so much good government you can apply to that. If you keep getting hit with Category 5 hurricanes in a place that's shaped like a bowl below sea level and sinking and entirely dependent on working pumps, and that's where the government element comes in, because the government's not competent or well-funded enough to keep these pumps in good operating order. That's a constant story there, that this pump's not working, that pump's not working. That's happening all the time. There are certain parts of the country that can only support large populations under conditions where this country is able to at least minimally fund this battle against nature that these cities represent simply by their very existence, being where they are. It's inherently a battle against nature. So in the case of New Orleans, you got terrible funding. You have a degradation. There was always a problem with government corruption there. But now it's just, you have these, it should be a very rich city. You got oil and gas, but you have these enormous oil and gas companies that only pay $1 a year in taxes. So none of that money is going into the infrastructure as it should. But going beyond that, they haven't invented anything that could really stop a city from being torn apart in the face of a Category 5 hurricane. And that is where there's a climate change element as well. A lot of America was settled by enormous engineering efforts to force large populations into areas to which they are not natural. Now, LA, it's not so much a climate change story so much as the whole period of massive settlement of LA, which is really from the late 19th century down to the present, was a climactic Goldilocks zone. Throughout the 20th century, Los Angeles was unusually habitable. If you go back and you look at the history, the geologic history of that region, its climate has historically been much more like what it is now. So now it is reverting to form. There's only, yes, you could mitigate these things with government policy, but what are you going to do? Like fireproof carpet the whole state? Like, it's just not meant to have millions of people living in it. And there is only so much you can do to really mitigate that. At the very least, to make it sustainable, you would have to seriously downsize the populations and the footprints in order to really make a sustainable modern society in this region that just doesn't really want people there.
Well, yeah, I mean, Jimmy sent us that video that's been making the rounds on X where Joe Rogan was recalling a conversation with a firefighter who told him, hey, look, at some point the winds are going to blow at the right speed in the right direction where the whole place is going to go up in smoke, and there's really nothing we can do about it. And, sooner or later our luck is going to run out. Well, this is what happened. I mean, look, when you have an area as vast as this and as developed as LA is, you have a drought and you have record high winds. That is a recipe for widespread fires. And at the end of the day, yeah, you're right. You do have to have some humility in the face of nature to understand that there's only so much you can do. The other side of that, however, is when you're talking about California, you're talking about what? The 5th largest economy in the world. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about an entity, a governing entity with resources at its disposal to, as best they can. And again, as you say, I think you're 100% right. It's not possible to insulate people entirely from the consequences of these things. But, this is a state that, is very happy to, virtue signal their concern for climate change by, putting Tesla charging stations in every Olive Garden parking lot, right? But are you taking seriously the risk to your populations that whatever climate trends are already in motion will affect the population. Like at a certain point, you have to say, okay, as the governor of a state, or especially as the mayor of a city, I can only do so much to stem the tide of climate trends, right? What I can do is take measures to protect my people and my state from the most dire consequences of that. Again, can you do everything? No, you can't do everything.
Sure,
You're talking about
sure.
80-mile-an-hour winds and a
Sure.
year-long drought. There's going to be damage, right? I'm not saying it's entirely solvable. But you do have a responsibility to do a hell of a lot more than they did. At the very least, tell people to pack a fucking suitcase and be ready to move because, hey,
Right.
they knew 2 days before there's going to be 14-year high winds and we've had a drought for 8 months.
Right.
Like,
And
that's
don't
the
go
bare
party in
minimum you could
Ghana.
expect from these
Sure.
fucking people, and they didn't do it.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Please clap.